Hello, welcome to the forum New Physics and Keppe Motor Technology. I'm Cesar Soz, an engineer of research and development of this technology, and I'm very happy to be here to introduce you to this new form of seeing physics, which I believe will be the path for the development of completely different technology from now on. So nothing better than to start speaking about the author of all this, who is Dr. Norberto Keppe. So Dr. Norberto Keppe is the founder and president of ISAT, International Society of Analytical Trilogy, or Integral Psychoanalysis. He studied with Dr. Viktor Frankl, creator of the logotherapy in Vienna, in the end of the 1950s, turning to 1960s. And he came to Brazil, and then he developed his own thesis, Integral Psychoanalysis, in which he states that the human being becomes neurotic and psychotic because he refuses to deal with his transcendental life, not like the Freudian analysis said, that because he rejected to deal with the instincts. So Dr. Keppe is also author of more than 40 books, and he made hundreds and hundreds of programs, TV programs and radios, which are translated and they are passing all over the world today. Dr. Keppe is very well known all over the world by his main discovery in psychoanalysis called inversion. And this is why, and I want to speak a little bit about this inversion in this process of physics, developing the new physics. So, what is the inversion? Inversion happens in the psychological life similarly to what happens in the physical life. When you look at an object, for example, represented in this picture, when you are looking at an object in the back of your eye, you see the image upside down, and psychologically you disinvert it. Your brain disinverts it, but this is a psychological process. It's not a physical process. Dr. Keppe perceived that this same phenomenon happens when we capture reality, psychologically speaking. So we capture reality in an inverted manner, but by some reason still not very well known. It's not well understood yet, this thing. We are not able to disinvert this. And because of that, we keep this inverted idea, this inverted vision of reality. And this makes us attach ourselves more to the physical, more to the sensorial life. And the more attached to the sensorial life and physical life, the more neurotic and psychotic we become. So if we are not able by ourselves to disinvert this process, we stay sick, we stay inverted. And this has nothing to do with the intellectual capacity of the human being. Because all human beings suffer from this disease, because this disease is unconscious. Inversion is an unconscious process, right? And great philosophers and scientists, they also had this inversion. So, what Dr. Keppe perceived in the works of Aristotle, who is the creator of science, is the father of sciences, as we know today, he started with Aristotle in ancient Greece. According to Keppe, Aristotle was inverted because when we see his maxim, look, nothing is in the intellect that was not first in the senses. Aristotle said that, meaning that all knowledge we have inside derives from the sensorial world, from the world of the senses, the physical senses. So in this sense, Aristotle started the inverted metaphysics principle from the lesser to the greater, meaning that our science today starts all theories from the lesser to the greater, which means we come from matter to energy, in other terms. From physical reality to transcendental reality. We are inverted in this way of seeing reality. Some examples of these inverted scientific theories they all have in common. They come from the lesser to the greater. Let's see. All of them have this in common. Quantum theory, for example, reality for quantum theory, reality which is greater, derived from particles, which is lesser. In the Big Bang theory, a cosmological theory that says that the entire universe came from a small portion of matter which exploded in a very remote past and then gave rise to all of this harmonic universe and almost infinite universe we see today. It derived from a very small particle, portion of matter. This also is the greater deriving from the lesser. It's inverted. Another theory in medicine this time, germ theory of disease from Pasteur, which states that the germs, the lesser, sickens the organisms, which are the greater. The organism is the greater. We all have an immune system, which is a big system, being sickened by something smaller, the viruses and bacteria and germs. Marxism, transcendence for Marxism, the greater, explained by matter, the lesser. So all transcendental reality for Marxism, Marxist theories, they are fruit of social development from matter. We created the idea of a transcendent, of God, because we need this to comfort ourselves because of the bad reality we face every day. Something like this, as if there was no transcendental reality in itself. So meaning that everything has a material reason. Darwinistic theories also says that the simple beings generate complex beings. This is also inverted. In Freudian theories also, psychological balance, which is greater, derive from instincts, the lesser. So today we see that this all science is based in this inverted idea from the lesser to the greater. Right? In the sense, when we see a film like this, The Terminator, we have this inverted tendency to substitute what is natural for what is artificial. Will this be the destiny of humanity, human beings greater turning into machines lesser? We are going to this. We believe that by replacing what is natural in us by artificial things, we will get better. We are in an evolution process, and this is a mistake. This inversion in physics, we can see physics was based upon metaphysics, Aristotelian metaphysics. And if metaphysics is inverted, physics is also inverted. And what is the main inversion in metaphysics that Dr. Keppe noticed? Is the conceptions of potentiality and act. Aristotle said that potentiality gives rise to act, meaning that matter gives rise to action, to energy. In physics, this would mean potential. Matter would give rise to energy. So, based on these thoughts, we believed that for us to have energy, we need to extract it from matter. In this inverted physics, matter produces energy. For example, if I have timber, solid matter, alcohol, liquid matter, gas, gaseous matter, this would lead to the creation of energy. If we see Isaac Newton, for example, in his famous formula, F equals m times acceleration, mass times acceleration, if m is 0, F is 0. In Einstein's formula, E equals mc squared, if m is 0, E is 0. For both scientists, if We have a world devoid of matter. We are devoid of forces and energy. We do not have force nor energy. So in other words, we need matter to have energy. That's the common thinking, scientific thinking. There was an article in a newspaper here in Brazil, dated 1999. It's a bit old, but it's still updated in the way science thinks. The article says, the energy of nothing. The energy of nothing. We need a new physics to understand the empty space, says Edgar Gunzig, who is a chief of a laboratory, physicist chief of a research laboratory in Europe, in Belgium. He's Belgian. And here he states, empty space is so deep of a problem that it could be the starting point of a new physics. So if we have a science that believes that energy comes from matter, if you remove matter, what's left? Nothing. So, but now quantum physics is studying the smallest particles of matter. It arrives to the conclusion that even though you have no matter, you face the greatest quantity of energy, which means there is energy in the nothing. But our metaphysics is based on matter. So how come we are going to develop a new science or continue to develop the science based on matter if the nothing is full of energy? So we need to restate things. We need to disinvert our way of seeing science, to disinvert metaphysics, to develop a new disinverted physics. This is the idea. And here comes the personality of Nikola Tesla, the greatest inventor of all times, one of the greatest inventors of all times. He said, if you want to discover the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Meaning that these things comes before matter. He also said in 1937, there is no energy in matter but that one received from the environment. Meaning that matter itself is sustained also by energy. And regarding his vision about Albert Einstein's theory, he said, Tesla believed that Einstein's theory of relativity would lead to scarcity of the planet's natural resources at faster pace, because energy is necessary to the development of the nations and cannot be indefinitely extracted from matter. For Tesla, if we see energy deriving from matter, we would destroy the physical world, because nations need energy to develop. If nations need that energy to develop, we would destroy our physical world in order to get energy. So this must be changed if we want to have a better future. So and Tesla stated that 1 century ago, so now we are seeing the result of what he said at that time. For Tesla, matter is like an air bubble in water, which appears to be more solid than the medium around, right? But without it, ceases to exist. If we look at a bubble of water, like in this picture, we think that the bubble is more dense than the water surrounding it. But in fact, in other words, matter is produced and sustained in time by the energy of the space, which means the same way that the bubble of air is sustained, is maintained by the liquid around it, matter is sustained, is maintained by the energy surrounding it, the transcendental energy around the matter. So we have to disinvert our way of seeing things. We must see what we believe to be more solid as something more subtle, more like weaker. So the transcendental elements are stronger and the solid elements are weaker. That's the disinversion we need to make from now on in this new physics. So the ideas of Tesla couldn't go forward because he also, based on these thoughts, he developed a wireless power transmission system in which we could have like simple towers is pumping energy from the air and using the earth in the principle of resonance would transmit energy all over the planet Earth. So you, with a simple antenna, could extract energy from the Earth, pumped by these towers. Just 10 towers like that, one in the back of this left picture, would be enough to feed the entire planet. So Tesla was financed by one banker, a financier called J.P. Morgan. I think many of you have heard about him. And he was a banker, and he believed only in profit. And the Tesla's discovery was not good. Tesla's invention of the wireless system was not good because he couldn't get money out of this. And so he made everything possible to destroy this invention. So Morgan is said to have turned against Tesla's work when he realized the scale of its revolutionary implications. The financier complained that Tesla's technological innovations were problematic because it was not clear how meters could be imposed for the buying and selling of energy. So everything is said here, no comments, right? And I think we see this today in many other fields like drugs and medicine. We could have like an energetic medicine today, and we are still using pills and chemicals. In this new disinverted physics, Dr. Keppe is very much aligned with Tesla's discoveries, and he believes, right, that matter, solid, liquid, or gaseous derived from transcendental energy. Tesla called scalar energy. Dr. Keppe calls it essential energy because it is essential for the existence of everything in the universe. Not only physical elements, but also spiritual elements. They are all made of this essential energy. So in his book, Magnetonics, Dr. Keppe writes, "We are living the greatest revolution of mankind, passing from a movement-based behavior toward an inner-based behavior, resembling the 17th century when Copernicus and Galileo proved that the Earth revolved around the sun, heliocentrism, opposed to the belief that the Earth was the center, geocentrism." So, if we are to make an analogy of that, if we see the geocentric system before Galileo, scientists believed Earth was the center. Then this idea passed to, disinverted, right? Now we know that the sun is in the center and all the planets revolve around it. This was a big revolution. It was a disinversion. And today we are passing through a very similar situation. We believe that matter is the center of reality, of energy. Matter is the center and energy is around. We have to disinvert this idea and put energy in the middle, in the center, and what we call matter, even though matter is energy in oscillation, in resonance, but is a secondary element. It's produced by the nucleus, which is pure transcendental energy, essential energy. And as you can see, we are proposing an exact analogy to what happened some centuries ago in cosmology. We are passing this revolution now. So we can expect a great revolution in science from now on based on this disinversion. If we start to see the energy as a principal element in this new physics, which we could call energetics, the science of energetics, right? The new physics is the science of energetics, of energy. So the most important law in physics would be then the law of tropy. Dr. Keppe states that in his book, The Theology of Physics, because we all know the law of entropy, which states that all matter goes towards destruction, the universe goes towards disorder, living beings go to death, and all this. The entire universe tends to stagnation, to a standstill, because they are losing energy to the outside. That's the idea of entropy. But this idea is predominant in physics because we start from matter. And as we are saying now that matter is a byproduct of energy, then it must have like a more encompassing law, a law of energy called tropy by Dr. Keppe, that explains the creation of the universe. Because if the universe goes to destruction, there must have a law first, before, of entropy, that explains the creation of the universe, right? This is logical. And this doesn't exist in conventional physics. So for Keppe, what happens in reality is that the most important law of physics is the law of tropy, which means an eternal renovation of everything that exists. I am using this term to indicate an eternal creation of this divine law. So if we have to put it in a simple way, we have on the left side the new physics, this inverted, on the right side physics, inverted. And transcendence would be on the side of the new physics, which encompasses the physical reality as well. And the objects of study of this new physics are essential energy, resonance, and vibration, internal vibration of this transcendental energy. These are the main elements of study in this new physics. And in the physics, we know, conventional physics, we know that the elements, basic elements are matter, time, space, and movement, external movement, right? Matter in movement, matter in oscillation. This is what physics studies. So the law of entropy, it starts in the physical realm, but it does not go towards the transcendental realm. The transcendental realm has the law of tropy, which is energy creating, restoring, and maintaining things. So tropy is a much broader law than entropy. Entropy is a byproduct, is a consequence of the law of tropy. We die because we are born. Right? First we are born and then we die. First one thing grows and then it dies. It shrinks and dies. Right? And also, you cannot expect to take a bunch of bricks and throw these bricks into the air and expect them to fall in the form of a house. This never happens. They will never happen. Even though the probability laws say there is one probability in billions and billions and billions, but we know this will never happen. It's against the common sense. There must have work in order for things to be the way they are, especially if these things are in harmony. And the very fact that the universe is still in expansion and the universe is expanding at an accelerated rate, which are an update, a later discovery. This, and also at the same time we see very harmonic things in nature, it means that the universe is being constantly created. And this happens because of the law of tropy, right? Stars, they are born out of the law of tropy. And they die out of the law of entropy, which is smaller, which is contained inside of this law of tropy, right? Another element, if we are talking about tropy, this tendency of creation, A very important concept is resonance once we are talking about energy. Resonance is that element that is a communicating element. It's through resonance that the energy creates the elements in the physical world. For example, resonance is this phenomenon that when a soprano shatters a crystal glass, she emits, for example, a very strong, intense voice, tune, in a specific vibration, which is the same vibration of the natural frequency of the crystal. When they match, it's like a radio tuning with the station. So when the crystal tunes with the voice of the soprano tunes to the vibration of the crystal, she can break the crystal if the voice is very intense. There is a transference of energy from the source to the element which is capturing the energy, right? And this phenomenon is so powerful that when we see what happened in Tacoma Narrows Bridge in 1940s, this is evident. The breeze of the wind passing through this channel provoked the phenomenon of resonance. It matches the tune, the vibration of the bridge, and then the bridge is collapsed because the material started to oscillate due to this phenomenon of resonance, and the bridge collapsed. This is amazing. This is the way that there is transference of energy to the material world, right? Matter is built up by resonance of the essential energy and sustained in time and space through this phenomenon of resonance. In magnetonics, Dr. Keppe defines matter, right, as a resonance of the essential energy enclosed in a certain time and certain space. It's a different definition. So, following this idea, what is electricity for Keppe? Electricity is magnetism through the wires. What we call electricity is no more than the transmission of the magnetism through the wires, which can be interrupted, enhanced, or reduced in its power according to the device developed for a specific finality. So, when we look at a battery, a closed circuit as a battery and a light, a lamp, electricity is the magnetism trapped inside the wire. This means that the energy the lamp is using to light up, derives from the environment and not exactly from the battery. The battery is acting just as an activator of the external energy. Let's see how this works. When we study electromagnetism, we come across the findings of this John Henry Poynting, a British physicist, who discovered the Poynting vector. What is this Poynting vector? Is the vector that indicates the direction of the density flux of energy. For example, when we turn on a flashlight, it's obvious to see that the light is pointing outward, the flashlight, okay? And the flux of energy is going also in that direction of the light. In this case, it's kind of clear to see it. But, so, just explaining this better. This vector, Poynting vector, is represented here by the C, the letter C. We have the letter E representing the electrical vector and B representing the magnetic vector. We know that the electromagnetic wave, light is an electromagnetic wave, is produced by these two different fields, and they are perpendicular one to the other, in relation to the other. And this Poynting vector is perpendicular to both the electric and magnetic vector. And this is along the z-axis of the coordinate system here, right? So in this case, the Poynting vector is parallel to the C vector, this red vector. It also goes along the Z vector. It's perpendicular to both electrical and magnetic vectors, right? When we try to see this, what happens in a battery has a positive polarity and a negative polarity. In this picture, we see that the force lines of the electric field between the positive end and the negative end of the battery are represented by these yellow arrows, right? But this, okay, we can see here, but if we have a closed circuit like this, we attach a piece of wire in the terminals of this battery, we can see that the electric field goes along the wire, right, to turn on the light. But what happens if we analyze it more closely? We see that the pointing vector in the battery points out towards the battery, right? Because the electric field is inside the wire. It's represented by this E vector, the red E, the red arrow goes according to the wire, right? But the pointing vector that shows the flux of energy points out towards the battery. And in the load, pay attention to the right side of the circuit. In the load, represented by the R resistance, right? The pointing vector, the blue vector, is pointing to the load, to the inside of the load. So in this sense, the flux of energy comes from outside the circuit, not from the battery, and not from the wire. It comes from outside the circuit. Dr. Keppe states here, the first and the biggest mistake in electronics was the development of the idea that the functioning of the machines like TVs, computers, calculators, comes from the movement of electrons and not from the magnetism which moves them. You see, in other words, we are seeing that the flux of energy pointing towards the lamp derives from outside, the same way that in the battery the flux of energy pointing out towards the battery. So is the movement of the energy outside surrounding the circuit is the responsible for the light we see coming from the lamp, and also from the energy stored in the battery, right? Because if you leave a battery on its own without attaching it to any circuit, this battery will eventually lose all of its power to the external environment, naturally, little by little. Physicists miss the knowledge of the basic function of the magnetism. Dr. Keppe continues here in magnetonics. We have to admit that the magnetic energy navigates mostly outside time and space. And this is evident in the instant connection of the telegraph as well as other mistakenly called electronic devices, and also in the telepathic and magnetic perception between the living beings. Human beings and animals, and even vegetables and minerals. Let's say that everything that exists has an intercommunication between themselves. We are obliged to admit that there is nothing isolated in time and space, right? So through this, based on this, what we said, that in a circuit the energy comes from outside, we can consider ourselves, and all elements in nature similar to circuits. We are getting energy from outside and retransmitting this energy to the outside. In this case, the load retransmitted the energy that the battery received and lost to the environment, right? We are all the time receiving energy from the outside and releasing energy in a second form of energy. Like, for example, I am releasing heat, right? This heat is a secondary energy in relation to the essential energy I am receiving from the environment to the environment, like the lamp and the battery. So now that we gave an overview, a briefing about the new physics concepts, let's go to the Keppe motor technology. The electric motors world overview first. What's the importance of motors in the world? I don't know if you know this information, but 47% of the consumed energy in the world comes from electric motors and their drive systems. 40 billion electric motors below 1 horsepower are in use today. So this means this is almost about half of the entire energy produced by the power plants in the world today are consumed by motors. Have you thought about this? It's amazing, the quantity of energy consumed by motors. In a congress in Peking, in Beijing, in China, 2015, they gave this information there, the Ministry of Industry in China. According to the statistics of China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, in 2011, the electric motors consumed 64% of the domestic commercial sector and 75% of the industrial sector. It's quite a lot, isn't it? Second, the potential savings of the electric motors is huge. If efficiency increases between 5 to 8%, something like 130 to 230 terawatts energy year, terawatt hour year, or better, 2 to 3 times the production of the Three Gorges hydroelectric power plant can be saved. Just 5 to 8% increase in efficiency of the motors. We know that the world of the electric motors is more or less this. We have motors divided into two categories. One is AC current motors and DC current motors. We are introducing now with the Keppe motor a third class of motors called resonant current motors. We can expect in the future to have the same ramification, the same branches for the Keppe motor as we have now with the alternating and direct current. So there is a lot to be developed yet, right? So power supply waveforms of electric motors. We have sinusoidal signal for AC motors. In this case, during the 360 degrees turn of the rotor, we have the coils in the stator, they are on all the time. 360 degrees, the coils are turned on. So the motor doesn't breathe, let's say. It receives a continuous flow of energy. In the case of direct current motors, they are all the time receiving direct current energy also. During the 360 degrees turn of the rotor, it continues to receive constantly direct energy. In the case of the power supply waveform of a Keppe motor, the Keppe motor works with a pulsed energy, form of energy. This means that it's on sometimes and off other times, on sometimes and off other times. And along the 360 degrees of the rotor turn, we have half of the time the motor is on and half of the time the motor is off. This means that the energy enters here and it stops here, enters here, stops here. But it doesn't stop, because when I cease the supply of energy to the coils, the motor starts to work as a generator, because it's a permanent magnet rotor spinning inside a bunch of coils, a winding. And so the windings, and the motor starts to work as a generator, producing energy. And this energy produced by the rotor spinning is collected in capacitors, and this capacitor voltage will be always higher than the voltage supply of the grid. And why that? Because when I interrupt the flow of energy, the electric energy, to the coils, there is a peak of voltage, and this peak of voltage is enough to increase the average voltage of the capacitor, right? And so the capacitor will always work at a higher voltage than the grid. And this energy, through a system we call electromagnetic turbo system, will return the energy in an appropriate time, very well worked by a microcontroller, right? Software in the microcontroller. We work it very well, the return of this energy, and then the motor will reach like electromechanical resonance. And this guarantees the higher efficiency of the Keppe motor, along with other characteristic features, physical features of the design. The resonant pattern is achieved when the generation phase equals the motor phase, similarly to the stationary wave pattern in a rope. If you take a rope and you start to vibrate this rope, according to the vibration speed of your hand, for example, you will see different knots in the rope. You will see a different pattern of stationary wave. So the motor, the Keppe motor, and the bottom here, blue and red, blue and red, blue and red, represents these nodes, what happens. And in between the blue and the red, you see there is a peak of voltage. This is all the time the current is interrupted in the motor coils, the stator coils. So the Keppe motor will have a peak of voltage which corresponds to the nodes of the rope in the picture above. This is pretty similar to what happens in this physical phenomenon of the rope, right? The motor works like this. So the Keppe motor, if we make a comparison with the induction motor, which is the most used in industry today, we see like this. For you to have a 90% efficiency motor is not easy. In the case of this table of a very big manufacturer here in Brazil, we see that a 1 kilowatt, let's say 1 horsepower represented by CV here, right? 1 CV. 1 CV motor is a 1 horsepower motor, has 82.6% efficiency at 100% of the load, in the nominal load. And for you to have a 90% efficiency, you are talking about a 7.5 horsepower motor. So for small motors, it's very difficult to have higher efficiencies. Small motors, these domestic purpose motors, household appliance motors, they normally have a very low efficiency. First, because they are single-phased motors, because they are domestic, and not all the homes, they have three-phase systems to use three-phase motors. So the regular efficiency of a single-phase motor goes around 40%, 35% at most, right? And it's so in this case, they will never reach 90% efficiency in a household appliance. I would like to quote this slide here of a magazine, specialized magazine from Chile. And they say that 44% of the motors used in industrial installations work at 40% or below the full load. This is what it states. And this in the United States, right? This means that most of the industrial motors in the United States are working below 40% of their nominal load, which means they are inefficient because their curve their curve of efficiency, says that the motor has a working range, and this working range normally goes from 75 to 100% efficiency. At 100% of the load, the efficiency will be here in this range. If you go below this 75, and I mean below 40% of this load, the efficiency will drop substantially, right? And the article continues here. The totality of the losses in the iron losses can represent sometimes 70% of all losses in a motor. So the losses in the iron is very important to be reduced. And in the case of the Keppe motor, we take out the magnetic core. Our motor, the Keppe motor, is a coreless motor. Despite it can also work with iron core, but its best configuration is coreless without iron core. But then you would ask, how come a motor without iron core can have torque? If you remove the iron core, there are different configurations you can do by placing different coils, independent coils around the rotor, and encasing these coils inside magnetic fields, enclosed magnetic fields. This will increase a lot the torque in the motor, as I will show in the drawings later on. Also, another thing to point out here in this article is that the sizing of a motor is a critical activity, because the oversizing of it will lead for sure to a bigger inefficiency of the motor. This means that, for example, if you have a load, if you have the necessity of a 1 horsepower motor to move a load, to move a certain load, no matter what, and if you use, instead of 1 horsepower, you use a 3 horsepower motor for the same task, this 3 horsepower motor will be working at 1/3 of the nominal load it should work. This means this motor will be working below this 40% stated by this article. And in many situations you see things like this. The person thinks that by putting there a much bigger, much powerful motor, it will do the work easier. No, it doesn't work this way. It simply would make the motor work, consume a lot of energy to produce little work. And this would increase a lot the inefficiency of the motor. And this happens a lot in developed countries, and I now imagine how much more this should happen in undeveloped countries. So here we have in a 100 horsepower motor, the regular efficiency at 100% of the load, 90% of efficiency, 82% efficiency in 10 horsepower, and 72% efficiency 1 horsepower. One big advantage we would have in using the Keppe motor in the place of an induction motor is the use of inverter. Sometimes you need an application in which is necessary to move the speed of the load. You need variable speed. And to have a variable speed for induction motor, you need to use an inverter to change the frequency, right? And this costs sometimes the same price of the motor itself. The set would be twice as much of the motor normally. In the case of Keppe motor, the system, the PCB, let's say the electronic circuit, contains itself the system of regulating the speed, normally at a very cheap price. It's a simple potentiometer. With a PWM you can do this. If we compare a 1 horsepower conventional induction motor in terms of weight, it weighs here 14.2 kilos in comparison to a Keppe motor on the right side, 4.5 kilos. This is extremely important for drones, for example, or applications in which autonomous systems of supply of energy is important, like cars, drones, like I said, and many other applications in which you need batteries, right? Batteries or solar panels. Independent measurements. In 2016, we took a Keppe motor laboratory prototype, a single-phase Keppe motor, because today we have three-phase, two-phase, and single-phase Keppe motors developed. But at that time, we had only the single-phase 1 horsepower Keppe motor, and we took it to the laboratory called Advanced Energy in North Carolina, 2016. They performed this test. There you have the Keppe motor as a wooden prototype, as you can see here, the Keppe controller and the load motor in the laboratory, in the bench. These were the curves. We can see in this curve at 100% of the full load, the single-phase Keppe motor 1 horsepower presented 89% efficiency, which is quite good if we have to compare with the conventional three-phase high-performance motors, which achieve this efficiency only at 6 or 7 horsepower, right? Also, this table was raised in the laboratory there in the United States. They say in this yellow line here, we see that the motor with a power output of 752 watts, which is almost 1 horsepower, right? 1 horsepower is 746 watts. So we have the motor working 1 horsepower. After 1 hour working constantly at full load, this motor had an increase in temperature from 22.27 to 29.43 degrees Celsius, which means 7.16 degrees Celsius rise in temperature. At full load, 1 hour working, 1 horsepower motor. This is almost nothing for a motor like that. So now if we compare the curves of 3 motors, 3 1 horsepower motors, the blue line represents the induction single phase. At 40% of the load, 54% efficiency. 100% of the load, 67%, right? Let's take now the induction 3-phase motor. Full load, 81.2% efficiency, 40% load, 71.7% efficiency. Keppe motor, 89.1%, 100% load, and 40% load, 86% of the efficiency, right? This means that you can vary the load a lot with the Keppe motor, and the efficiency will be almost the same. It will lose only 3% when you displace the load from 100 to 40%, right? As we can see in the graphics. What are the basic components of the Keppe motor? We have the inner magnetic ring, which can be composed of many polarities, permanent magnets. In this case, 6 poles we have here. It's an hexapolar motor. Then we have the external magnetic ring and the confinement cup. This confinement cup has the purpose of locking the magnetic field inside it. So this reinforces the magnetic field of the external magnetic ring. In this sense, then we have the coil encased in resin. Now I think you can see the motor working. This coil is placed inside, in between these two magnetic rings, right? Like this. The coils will be there in the middle of two magnetic rings. The coil stays inside the gap between the two magnetic rings of opposite polarity. So you can imagine what happens if I start a flux of current inside the coil, which is in between these two magnets, permanent magnets. The force will be really, really great. And this is the way we get the maximum efficiency and torque out of a Keppe motor. But this is an example of a single-phase motor. We can put a two-phase and three-phase motor as well, which works much better. Some certified products. So far we have had 3 certified products. The first of them was released in the market in 2015, and it was 2014, I'm sorry. 2014, it was a ceiling fan. The measurements were like that, as shown above. 120 and to 107 watts is a conventional ceiling fan consumption. The Keppe motor consumed only 28.5 to do the same work, which means an average economy of 80%. And then we released 2 other products, a wall and a stand fan, 60 centimeter blade fan. Conventional fan like that consumes between 150 and 200 watts, and the Keppe motor consumes only 57 watts, which means an average economy of 67%. This is this universe ceiling fan, and it's very suitable for a solar panel, right? You can have a very small solar panel of 80 watts. It's a very small solar panel. Suppose you have a 40-watt solar panel, and you can run a Keppe motor like that. It's a fantastic product if you think in terms of economy. So the Keppe motor can save up to 90% energy in relation to a conventional motor. Let's see how this can be. An example, if you take the ceiling fan, the slower speed of a ceiling fan is 150 RPM, top speed 400 RPM. We took like similar fans, right? The input at the slower speed is 2.5, the top speed 28, in the case of a Keppe motor. In the case of a conventional ceiling fan, the slower speed it would consume 60 watt and top speed 150. We took a very good fan in the market, okay? We could have taken much worse products, but this is a very good motor in the market. If we make a comparison, the energy savings by using the Keppe motor, we would come with these figures. At a slower speed, the savings would be 95.8%, and top speed savings would be 81.3%. This would represent an average of 87, 86 to 88% in average if you use the Keppe motor in relation to the AC conventional induction motor, okay? And also to give you an idea, if this was applied to a country like Brazil, if we take Brazil, we consume new ceiling fans, 12 million units of all types of fans every year. Among these, 2.5 million fans correspond to ceiling fans. And all of these, they consume in average 37 gigawatt hour of energy per month. Just keep this number in mind, 37 gigawatt in energy. The annual production of Itaipu, one of the two biggest hydroelectric power plants in the world, produces 79 gigawatt hour a year, 20 turbines. One turbine monthly production would be 331 gigawatt hour month. If we have this number of the savings of Keppe Motor, 37 gigawatt hour month, this would represent 11.2% of one Itaipu turbine economy, right? And what does this represent in practice? A little more than one turbine is required to supply energy to the entire country of Paraguay. This means that by replacing only the ceiling fans in Brazil, the conventional ones to Keppe motor fans, we would save enough energy to supply a country like Paraguay, almost like that. Imagine, this is 10%, 11% of a country like Paraguay. This means a lot. And I'm not talking about many other products, not only ceiling fans, but stand fans, wall fans, exhaust fans, water pumps, air conditioners, mixers, water pumps, and all of different types of products that use small motors and have low efficiencies. Have you had an idea of how much we could help save the planet if the Keppe motor was applied for different products, small motors? Just to give you an idea of these savings, we made a table, this table here, and all of this table were done, these products in this table, they were done in practice in our laboratory here. And these comparisons are true comparisons. They are not projections, they are real comparisons, okay? So a ceiling fan, 81% economy. Wall stand fan, 65 average economy. Refrigerator, 50% economy. Water pump, half horsepower, 3-phase. If we compare to a Keppe motor, 26%. Vacuum cleaner, 47%. Air conditioner, 40%. Blender, 53%. Weed whacker or grass cutter, 71%. Simple washing machine, 56%. And so on and on and on and on. If we, I recall you now, one of these slides I passed before about the Ministry of Industry in China, which stated that if we could save between 5 and 8% of energy, increase between 5 and 8% the efficiency of the motors, we would save 2 to 3 gorgeous hydroelectric power plants in consumption of energy. Imagine if we pay attention to these numbers we are showing to you today, how much more we could save in energy. So this is the message I would like to deliver to you now and let you think and make you think a lot what is the benefit that the Keppe motor, this technology, and based on this new physics I just introduced to you, and I want you to go deeper to this by consulting our books. The books are available in our bookstore. Just enter in the site and you can see that. You can order the books, right? And I would like you to make you reflect about this. How much more we could do in terms of saving our planet if we could follow these teachings that Dr. Norberto Keppe is bringing with his trilogical science, the trilogical physics, the disinverted physics. And this is the message I would like to give for you today. I thank you very much for everything. Bye.
The Keppe motor is very pleased to announce that October 2020 has brought further recognition for this landmark invention. A successful patent application for technological innovation has just been finalized in Brazil. This important achievement adds to the Keppe motor's significant patent recognition, Keppe motor patents around the world. The principle of resonance that drives the Keppe motor is now undeniably acknowledged as a truly innovative and revolutionary technological development. Based on Norberto Keppe's discoveries outlined in his revolutionary books on new physics and magnetonics, the Keppe motor presents the world with a new state-of-the-art physics highlighting magnetism. The winner of several international awards, Keppe motors are #1 in energy efficiency ratings and feature dozens of other advantages in their products. Keppe's profound, decades-long scientific research has produced a science that restores true metaphysics and, more significantly, disinverts modern physics. As well, we offer the world's only educational program in new physics, along with other vital leading-edge courses relevant to solving the world's myriad problems at our Keppe and Pacheco Trilogical College. Thank you, Brazil, for providing us with the safe and fertile environment for developing this important technology. Now, we offer the benefits to all of humanity.